March 5th, 2018, Yuji Itadori makes his first appearance in Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 1 as a gifted kid with physical abilities, allowing him to run faster than cars and easily shatter world records with his crazy physical strength. Now, 68 years later in 2086, Yuji Itadori has become the strongest sorcerer in history with abilities surpassing characters who control infinity itself and even the gods. But how strong is Yuji really? So in this video, we'll be going through the timeline and explain every one of his forms in Jujutsu Kaisen, starting with his early life as a prodigy, then transitioning into his godlike forms in the end. So without further ado, subscribe as it helps a lot, and let's hop into it. Starting all the way at 1%, we have Teen Yuji. At the very start of our story, as we said before, he was always weirdly physically gifted. We would later figure out it's due to the fact that he has some of the most cracked, busted, OP genetics in the verse. Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history, was initially supposed to be born a twin, but in the womb he ate his other half. 1,000 years into the future, and now that lost soul gets reincarnated as Wasuke Itadori, Yuji's grandfather, and lurking in the shadows was Kenjaku, Jujutsu's most evil sorcerer. He took the body of Yuji's dead mother, then procreated with Sukuna's bloodline to create Yuji, the sorcerer at the time who unknowingly had the most genetic potential in the entire universe. This picture of Kenjaku is unironically probably canon. In episode 1 of the anime, he meets Megami and they realize a curse is currently attacking the school with some of his friends inside. They run up to the building and we find out from Yuji himself that his friends are on the 4th floor. Megami confronts the curse, but right as it's about to eat this girl, he flies through the window before smashing this curse. A typical 4-story building in Japan is roughly 12 to 14 meters tall, or 40 to 46 feet tall. And this guy with zero cursed energy jumped in before laying pipe. Already, at the start of our series, at 16 years old, he's already beyond a peak human being. Then obviously, as we know, he eats one of Ryomen Sukuna's fingers to try and gain power. And when against all odds, the 1 in a million happens and Sukuna reincarnates, taking over Yuji's body. But much to everyone's shock, Yuji actually has the ability to suppress Sukuna, which obviously, as we stated before, is because they're related. And with the King of Curses embedded within him, Yuji joins Jujutsu High, and now this is a great time to introduce their grading power scale. There are 5 levels of sorcerers, grade 4 through 1. Then at the very top are the special grades, and the grading system is set up in such a way that a certain grade will always win against the same number level curse. First, we have the grade 4s, which are like the absolute walking trash cans that can barely handle the most minor of threats. Like you give some default human a baseball bat and he could deal with the grade 4 curse. Then we have the grade 3 sorcerers, also kind of shit, but they have more experience wielding curse energy and they have some sort of technique to help in battle. The power is equivalent to a small handgun. Grade 2 are the average sorcerers that have a much better understanding of curse energy and they can handle solo missions, and their strength is around equivalent to a shotgun. And then finally, at the top of normalcy, where it should end, we have grade 1. These are the elite top level sorcerers that have insane curse energy control and extremely strong techniques. Even a military tank may not be suffice to deal with the stuff they handle. And at the top of the verse, we have the people that break the scale with their power. Special grade sorcerers have the strength to take over entire countries and in some cases the entire planet. And we cut to his first mission as a sorcerer. Without any control of cursed energy, he already has the ability to destroy this default curse while displaying crazy fighting prowess. And not even a minute later, we see this curse holding this kid hostage against a wall when Yuji punches through concrete like warm butter and walks through like Yujiro before slicing its arms off and kicking it away. So right away, we can already tell grade 3 to 4 curses are fodder compared to him before even learning the most basics of how cursed energy works. And speaking of cursed energy, we will now go from his 1% to 5% strength with his second form, Beginner Sorcerer. Gojo takes Yuji under his wing in order to train him, and Yuji says to him that he wants to be strong and to
make me into the strongest.
And here's where you learn the difference between cursed energy and cursed technique. Think of cursed energy like electricity and cursed techniques like appliances. You used cursed techniques powered by the cursed energy to achieve various goals. The problem for Yuji is that cursed techniques are all etched into your body from the day you're born. So the skill and strength of a sorcerer is kinda up to luck. And while Yuji's molding, Gojo reveals that in time, because of Sukuna being in his body, he may be able to use some of his techniques. But way before we get to that, we need to learn the basics of channeling cursed energy. The way to control it is by controlling your own negative emotions. Easier said than done though. So, what grueling technique will Gojo use to teach him? Movies. Yeah, I'm not joking. Because he wants to have Yuji watch all sorts of movies with this doll thing, and if he stops pouring cursed energy into it, it'll wake up socking him in the face. The point of this exercise is to get him used to having basic control over his energy, regardless of his current emotion. Just from this one basic exercise alone, I would estimate he's gone from grade 3 to semi-grade 2. Stronger than the grade 3 shitters, but not quite grade 2 yet. And later in the next episode, Yuji is fully introduced to the true power of what Jujutsu can do, and witnessing Gojo fight Jogo. Bro's like, won't bring in the kids, slow you down, and Gojo's like, nah, it'll be fine. You're kind of weak. Which pisses him off to the point where he shoots lava out in every direction. And Yuji's watching this like, this guy's weak? Imagine being Yuji in this scenario, seeing a monster shoot lava out in every direction from pure rage, shaking the ground, and having your teacher expect you to surpass that in the near future. And this is where we get our first introduction to domain expansions, the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery. By projecting your innate domain outward and closing it with the domain, you create the strongest weapon in any sorcerer's arsenal. A domain does three main things. Firstly, trap anyone inside. Secondly, give you a stat boost in cursed energy efficiency. And thirdly, and most importantly, a domain imbued with a cursed technique is guaranteed to hit. You heard that right. If your technique is insta-kill when touching an opponent, then trapping them in your domain is guaranteed victory, as they cannot dodge it no matter what. Jogo activates his domain, but Gojo unleashes his, which overpowers it, ending the fight. Gojo wields power over space and infinity. By being hit with his domain, the brain is being overloaded with infinite sets of infinite information, nearly instantly completely shutting down any opponent it hits, since they are far too overwhelmed to do anything. No one can survive being hit by this attack, and this is the type of power that makes others view you as a god. And by the end of this video, my goat Yuji will have completely eclipsed and passed this. But that's for later. Now we will skip from 5 to 10% with his third form of easily having the power of a low grade 1 sorcerer. Cutting a few episodes later in our story, he meets this emo kid Junpei. This kid gets bullied and picked on by everyone at school and is just overall having a really tough time with life. Yuji befriends him because he feels bad, but behind the scenes, a patch-faced curse named Mahito appears and teaches Jujutsu to Junpei to confront and kill his bullies. Yuji, obviously worried about his friend, appears at the school to try to stop him, but it's too late as Mahito touches the kid from behind. That's a crazy sentence to say without context. And transforms him into a scary, terrible monster in which he's basically dead, but not really, as he can still feel pain while being semi-conscious. For some context, Mahito is a curse with the ability to change the forms of others by touching their soul, basically being an insta-kill. And what he does to Junpei breaks Yuji as he begs Sukuna to heal him, but he refuses. And while Yuji's heart is shattering, Mahito and Sukuna are laughing at him while he stands there powerless, as Junpei, barely before dying, is hanging on to his friend, asking him for help, before he can't hold on any longer and perishes. As Yuji absolutely bashes Mahito in the face. Normal sorcerers can't damage Mahito because his power revolves around the soul, so unless you can hurt the soul, he won't actually be injured. But because Yuji has Sukuna inhabiting his soul, he's actually aware of the shape of souls, and he's one of the only sorcerers able to damage Mahito. These two are natural enemies. And look at my goat, he is fucking livid, exploding with cursed energy. One of the most raw scenes in the entire show. This fight between these two was a catalyst for both of them to get much stronger, as we see his punches are now strong enough to level the entire battlefield. Pain nearly has zero effect on him as he tanks spikes through his hands and then even 3 through his chest. Nothing's phasing this guy as he keeps hitting Mahito with the invincible special, ramming him with constant headers. Then Nanami appears to help him, but to separate the two, he sends out little mini transfigured humans, which Yuji runs away from since he doesn't actually want to kill them, because now he knows they were originally humans. One of them straight up tells him to kill it because he doesn't want to live like this anymore. And I think this is the moment where something snaps within him, allowing his kill switch to be dialed up a little more. He didn't want to kill an actual human being, but realized that if he hesitates, more people will die. And then after watching his friend die and then having to kill more real people, bro is livid as he starts jumping Mahito with Nanami. This shit was so peak. But this awakens Mahito as for the first time he can unleash a domain. He kicks Yuji out as now Nanami is stuck within it. But before he dies, Yuji breaks inside, and as he falls in, the can't miss technique touches Yuji's soul alongside Sukuna's, and this guy with not having it as he slices Mahito, putting an end to this fight. This fight overall though was a huge development for Yuji as a sorcerer, as his output vastly increased. It was great practice as a sorcerer, and he finally has developed a more ironclad will and not hesitating to kill when needed. Now moving one tier higher to 25%, we have Yuji becoming a fully fledged grade 1 sorcerer. This is where we see our cast getting ready for the Kyoto exchange event, basically a supposed fun event where both schools come together to have various games and challenges to show off their skills or something. They're all discussing their plans and they ask Yuji what he's good at. He says punching and kicking. Panda says they already got that covered before Megumi throws up one of the most generational aura lobs the world has ever seen.
If we all fought him without cursed energy, Itadori'd still beat us.
My goat, Wuji Itadori is so tough, bro. We cut to the match where Yuji first meets Toto. Toto is an Interesting, Soul. Definitely a bit of the tism, but also at the same time, the smartest person in the verse with an IQ of 530,000. But the main takeaway here is that Toto is ridiculously strong. He runs in, beating the dog shit out of Yuji, literally curb stomping his ass. And when walking away, Yuji stands back up, pissed off, much to the surprise of Toto. Then obviously the famous quote, Toto asks him what kind of woman is his type. Because to Toto, your taste in women literally determines your value as a human being. And if you say some boring shit like, I like women for their personalities, he will actually just beat the dog shit out of you.
I like a tall woman with a nice big ass. Just saying. Like Jennifer Lawrence.
And this answer was so unbelievably beautiful, it touches Toto down to the depths of his soul. And in his mind, they've now become brothers, and he would die for his brother. But after getting back up, Yuji seemed to adapt and close the gap in power between them, as he's starting to actually lay into Toto, pushing him back before hitting a crazy drop shot on bro. And this guy Toto is legit nutting to himself at how impressed he is over Yuji, even admitting his raw strength is greater than his without cursed energy. Before he eventually confronts Yuji on one of his biggest issues, when he punches, his cursed energy has a bit of a time lag to it. That's a very bad habit to make. Now, why that's a very bad habit to make, we will see in a second. And appearing at the perfect time to prove this is the special grade curse Hanami. This curse is nearly as strong as Jogo, the curse he was fumbling at the sight of mere episodes ago. So let's see what he can do now, being guided by the Aoi Toto. And before the fight starts, Toto says he won't help Yuji until he lands a black flash. This is the reason Toto doesn't want Yuji to have a time lag with his punches, because when a sorcerer applies cursed energy within 1/1,000,000th of a second, the attack gets massively amplified, and it's called a black flash. A black flash is impossible to do at will for any sorcerer, and it's basically luck a lot of the time for them, and its power gets raised to 2.5 degrees. Now, if you're not the sharpest tool in the crayon box, let me explain to you why this is pretty fucking broken. If your punch did, let's say, 100 damage, then 100 raised to the 2.5th power would become 100,000. So in this case, it would become 1,000 times stronger. Now, if your punch did 1,000,000 damage, after raising it to the 2.5th power, it would make it do 1,000,000,000,000 damage, which literally makes it 1,000,000,000 times stronger in this case. No one seems to understand this point when bringing up Black Flash, but its effectiveness in battle directly scales to how strong you are, which is why when everyone was fighting Sukuna, their Black Flashes were doing minimal damage. But when Gojo fought Sukuna, his Black Flash was knocking him the fuck out, putting him to sleep. But back to his fight, Yuji is overtaken by rage thinking about Mahito, and Goat Toto pimp slaps him across the face, explaining to him that anger is a double-edged sword in battle. It can give you strength to win, but it can also cause you to fail. And after calming him down, being the best sensei Yuji's ever had, he flies back into battle, landing his first Black Flash, eviscerating this curse's defenses. Another merit of landing these is kind of the fact that it acts like a battery refresher, as every time you hit them, it throws you deeper in the zone and you get even stronger. Then we all remember what happened next with Toto unveiling his Boogie Woogie technique as they absolutely slap Hanami around with their massive swinging schlongs. And we cut to a flashback talking to Nanami, who's the current world record holder for Black Flashes when he hit 4 in a row. I theorized Sukuna or Gojo couldn't really break this record, mainly because no foe they verse could really survive that long for them to land 4 in a row. But cutting back to my goat Yuji, he literally the same hour learning what Black Flash even is, ties the world record, banging 4 in a row. Insane prodigy. But after having such an insanely climactic fight, Gojo breaks the barrier and Hanami's just like, and yeah, now with Hanami gone, we finish our season in our 4th tier of Yuji's strength. After his fight and Toto's goated training, he's easily surpassed the average grade 1 sorcerer and has truly entered a terrifying level of strength where he has a much stronger control of his cursed energy, emotions, and is already one of the best Black Flash users in the entire verse. And to solidify this claim, Yuji was even recommended to the principal to be promoted as a grade 1. Now moving from level 4's 25%, we go to our 5th level of 50%, where he truly becomes a god of war. This massive event takes place in none other than Shibuya on October 31st, Halloween night. Let me just say, as many of you know, shit goes down in Shibuya. He first enters the subway station where he sees this grasshopper curse, and at this point in the story, you gotta be at least a special grade curse for him to really struggle, as he bends this thing over touching it. But later in the arc, we find his first real opponent in Choso. As a curse, he's a special grade, but as a sorcerer, he's an extremely high grade 1, with abilities such as Piercing Blood, a high speed attack that can pierce through nearly anything it touches, Supernova, an attack that blows everything in the surroundings up, and finally can harden his blood in his body to level strong enough to tank Sukuna's Fuga and survive Sukuna's Black Flash. And we talked about how strong that would be. They have a long drawn out fight. Once again, we see Yuji is a master level fighter whilst also being able to draw out maximum effectiveness weakness from the environment around him, but sadly he barely gets beaten by Choso in the end. So from this, we can see Yuji is probably around slightly above the average grade 1, since Choso is a high tier grade 1, and that fight was extremely close. But after being knocked out though, Sukuna takes over his body, killing countless people, fighting Jogo and Mahoraga, absolutely eviscerating the landscape, and by the time Yuji regains control of his body, he is horrified at the sight of destruction that was caused from his weakness. While more of his humanity dies, he gets back up knowing the job isn't finished as he wanders through the subway station before once again seeing Mahito with his hand already on Nanami's back as he's forced to powerlessly watch as more people die in front of him. He hops straight into battle, but this is not the same Mahito we saw before. He's easily special grade now, and only a high leveled grade 1 could stand up to him. But even with this new power, Yuji is not going to take his master's death sitting down as he throws one of the greatest combos the world has ever seen. But as the fight continues, Nobara tries to join him for some reason, and is forced to once more watch someone close to him perish because of his own weakness. And unlike the last time where he was given an extra push from the rage, he's just past his limits and he can't hold back the sadness anymore, while Mahito comes flying in, slapping him around. And right before he gets delivered the final blow, the GOAT himself, Todo, arrives to save his brother again, and by slapping him back into shape, they continue their 2v1, growing stronger than ever before, bringing out 120% of their latent potential. And near the end of the fight, Todo falls and Mahito awakens to his final form, which his body is covered with an armor even tougher than Choso's blood, which, keep in mind, was strong enough to survive a black flash from Sukuna. This version of Mahito is vastly stronger than any of the other disaster curses and requires some of the strongest grade 1 sorcerers to put down. Their fight starts, and as we all saw, Yuji rose up to the challenge, absolutely shattering that armor with one of the strongest black flashes in history. And now at the end of the Shibuya Incident, we've seen once more Yuji gets vastly stronger. And remember when Yuji was freaking out about Jogo's strength? Well, yeah, now he's surpassed it. He originally lost to Choso, but now after his fight with Mahito has undoubtedly surpassed him, with even Choso himself watching him beat curses, calling him terrifying, and that since his fight with him, his curse energy control is near perfect without it faltering a bit. He then calls him a god of war, noting the fact that now he's in top shape, which is doubling down on the fact he's gotten a lot stronger since their fight. Keep in mind, he still has no curse technique and is now probably one of the strongest grade 1 sorcerers. But now, folks, we skip towards the final Sukuna fight, where our GOAT goes from 50% all the way to his 100% form. This foe they are currently fighting is said to be the strongest sorcerer in all of histories, with the abilities to easily no-diff most special grade curses or sorcerers. He first kills Gojo and Kashimo back-to-back, some of the strongest sorcerers in the entire series. And now fighting against all the rest of the fighters, he obviously isn't at full strength, but he definitely still more than enough for all of them. Remember that extremely strong fighter who beat Yuji not even that long ago? Yeah, this version of Sukuna literally flies in faster than Piercing Blood's insane speed and one-taps him. Just to put things into perspective, Yuji tries to run in to help, but instantly gets his entire stomach sliced open. But now, finally learning a new move, we find out Yuji has access to the reverse curse technique so he could heal himself. One of the most elite moves in all of Jujutsu sorcery that very few sorcerers can ever achieve. They continue their fight until Yuta flies in, popping his domain, in which he, Yuji, and Rika will all try and take down the King of Curses. They go back and forth for a while, where Yuta even mentions that if Gojo hadn't weakened Sukuna so much, they all would have been wiped out in an instant. Yuji gives him one of the most disgusting knees to the face before Sukuna grabs him in close, shredding open his stomach again. But this time Yuji spits the blood in his face before it erupts, giving Yuta an opening. And for the first time in the series, Yuji has used a curse technique. This is the same move as Choso's supernova from before. But that's not the only thing he's cooking up. And a few chapters later, he confirms our suspicion while getting point blank from Sukuna, launching piercing blood, ripping a part of his face off. So now for the first time ever, alongside having insane physical strength, the best fighting prowess in the show, a Black Flash prodigy, reverse curse technique, he now has blood manipulation. And after that attack, he hits one of the meanest Black Flashes in the entire series, and amidst the shower of black sparks, Yuji Itadori awakens. Once more, we are reminded that Yuji has the blood of Sukuna running through his veins, as Urame asks the question we're all thinking. Does this mean that Yuji has the potential to equal Sukuna? When cutting them facing off, Yuji quickly hits a second and a third Black Flash on Sukuna, bringing out more of his potential, when finally, as Gojo and I stated at the beginning of the story, Yuji activates Shrine for the first time, Sukuna's own curse technique. So at the moment, he's one of the few people on the entire planet with 2 curse techniques, blood manipulation and malevolent Shrine. They get back to scrapping, and then he hits a 4th, and a 5th, and a 6th, and then a 7th, and then finally an 8th Black Flash in a row, absolutely shattering the previous world record. He is now the greatest Black Flasher in the verse, which causes Sukuna to fully start molding, knowing he's about to get bodied. Then he activates a half-broken domain in which Yuji also whips out his ability to use simple domain in order to survive the onslaught. Simple domain is a technique that is used to counter complete domains for its sure hit effect to not hit you. It's definitely not perfect, as we've seen much more powerful domains shred them instantly, but at this point in the story, Sukuna is heavily weakened, so it actually helps to keep them alive and do the trick. The fighting continues until finally everyone has fallen, other than Yuji and Sukuna. And now Yuji has mixed in soul punches with his dismantle, cutting through the soul in every hit. But Sukuna claims that it doesn't matter at the end of the day if he doesn't get hit, and then he does it. We get the flashback to the very beginning of the story where Yuji watched Gojo pop his domain. A granted curse technique activated inside the domain will always hit. As finally, after all this time, Argo ascends to the highest level of Jujutsu sorcery, popping a domain. And while raining down soul slashes, he eventually triumphs over the exhausted Sukuna, putting an end to the terror of the Shinjuku showdown. So let's recap end of series Yuji for a second. He has delayed punches, soul punches, some of the best physical stats in the entire verse, reverse curse technique, simple domain, best Black Flash user in the entire show, blood manipulation, malevolent shrine, and finally, his own domain. This guy at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen is easily top 10 in the entire verse, maybe top 5, but historian growth and strength does not end here, folks. We must traverse to Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, which was a small sequel manga that takes place 68 years in the future with the sole purpose to upscale and glaze Argo. And now finally, folks, we enter his final form, going from 100% all the way to 1000%, where he basically gets infinitely stronger, can diff the entire verse, and more or less just becomes God. Now, if I'm going to make the claim he can diff everyone in the verse, I'd better explain how strong the top tiers in the verse are. As far as everyone concerned, the 4 strongest characters of all time are Ryomen Sukuna, the walking natural disaster, Satoru Gojo, the honored one, Dabura, the alien warrior, and finally Yuji Itadori. So let's break down these 3 stats, and I'll prove to you why my GOAT low diffs all of them. Starting off with Gojo being the wielder of the 6 eyes and limitless technique, he was born to be the strongest. The limitless technique allows him to bring infinity forward into reality and can control space. Using his technique, he puts an infinite amount of space around him so no one can touch him. The closer you get to him, the slower you go. You can also use this in the form of blue, which is a ball that sucks everything into it, on top of warping space to teleport. He can then apply the cursed reversal to his technique, making red. Instead of a convergence sequence, this sequence diverges, so we can use that to repel and launch it away. Finally, when mixing together these 2 different infinities, he basically breaks reality, forming purple, which is more or less just a ball of destruction that destroys almost anything it touches. But how can he sustain such amounts of power and cursed energy? Well, that's where his 6 eyes come into the equation. This is a rare hereditary trait that hasn't been seen in 400 years since Gojo was born. Oh, also kind of off topic, but Gojo is so strong that just the act of him being born shifted the entire balance of the planet. But the 6 eyes allows him to see cursed energy all the way down to an atomic level and give him perfect efficiency. So by constantly feeding his brain cursed energy, he can activate his infinity and other techniques 24/7, 365 with 0 issues. No one on the planet has better performance than him. Most characters pop a domain and get really tired after, but for Gojo, he doesn't even notice. And then finally, his strongest move is his domain, Infinite Void, which I already mentioned earlier in the video. It's overwhelming their brain with infinite sets of infinite information, basically turning them into a vegetable. Next is Ryomen Sukuna, the guy who beat Gojo. He is a lot more simple to break down. His output and performance is nearly as good as Gojo, even without the 6 eyes. His curse technique is a malevolent shrine. As stated before, more or less just slashes, but after hitting an opponent with both types of his slashes, he's fulfilled the requirements for Fuga, a massive flaming arrow that just giga nukes anything it hits, on top of also having 4 arms and 2 mouths in order to make hand gestures and say incantations without hindering his ability to fight in the slightest. Kashimo, another extremely powerful character, took one look at Sukuna and called him perfection incarnate. He also has access to the world cutting slash after studying Maharaga's fight with Gojo, which is the move he used to beat him with. It's a slash that bisects reality itself, so even Gojo's infinity was powerless against it. And then finally, one of the most broken abilities is having a barrierless domain. Most characters, when activating a domain, surrounds it with a barrier, but Sukuna has the ability to have it barrierless, which makes the range much larger and proves to be useful in battle for beating almost any domain in a clash. This feat is truly divine, as it's equated to painting in the air without a canvas. And then finally, the third top tier is Dabura. It was stated when making his appearance to be roughly around the same level as Sukuna. His best feats are moving sub-light speed and beating Mahoraga in a fight. People will claim he's way stronger or way weaker than Gojo or Sukuna, but it's pretty clearly narratively implied that these three are all relative in strength. And then we get to final form God Yuji. He's stated to be the clear strongest of the era, and holy shit, when we first see him, we know why. He first appears in the Modulo manga in chapter 19, where he airs out an entire building with piercing blood. Remember when Choso and Sukuna used piercing blood? It looked like this. Okay, cool. Now look at Yuji's. Even by heavily holding back not to kill anyone, he airs out like an entire 25-story building with zero effort, diddling everyone inside. One of the warriors jumps out of the building trying to attack him, and with one hand still in his pocket, he catches the axe with his other while using countless tiny slashes around his hand like a mini chainsaw, so the weapon couldn't even make contact with him. Then says to the guy, "You look pretty tough, so you should be fine," as he black flashes him away. It's said no sorcerer can use black flash at will, with the sole exception of Yuji Itadori, of course. Normally, to land a black flash, as we've seen, a sorcerer has to be incredibly locked in, but this guy has his hands in his pockets, barely even trying. Now, many people, including me, share the opinion that he can probably just black flash at will, which is unironically one of the most broken abilities physically possible. You remember what I said earlier about black flash's usefulness exponentially scaling to a sorcerer's strength? So someone at the tier of strength as Gojo and Sukuna with this ability unironically one-shots 99.9% of the entire cast with his first full powered punch. Then after, we see him turning around, hitting this guy with a quick scratch of blood manipulation, making him sick, throwing up. And right after this, we see thousands of cursed spirits flying towards him as he lets out one default dismantle, nuking the entire battlefield. An explosion bigger than Sukuna's Fuga with just one dismantle. Now obviously, as you probably know, the smoke isn't really all from him. It could just be the smoke that appears after killing a cursed spirit. Whether you want to believe the explosion was smoke or just his raw power, it doesn't really matter, because either way he'll still solo the verse, which will be very clear after this video is over. We cut to the end of the manga where he finds Mahito lurking after all these years. We can only assume he's gotten stronger since the last time they saw each other. He gets mad claiming he'll kill him, and we see this entire world, the entire ground itself, is controlled by Mahito, and he doesn't even waste a second popping a domain. But before anything can even happen, with his hands in his pockets, everything, and I literally mean everything, within hundreds of feet is completely sliced up and eviscerated as he no diffs him. Do you remember when he was a special grade threat, Yuji had to reach 120% just to barely overcome? Look how far he's come. And I hate to be the one to say it, but we never saw this guy Sukuna do anything like this. Then he goes up to the sliced up Mahito and says, "Damn, were you always this weak?" My god, bro. Okay, so let's recap all of Yuji's abilities and let's make the final verdict of why he just diffs everyone. Firstly, he has delayed punches, soul punches, which are much harder to heal from than normal ones, the most cracked blood manipulation we've ever seen, reverse curse technique, probably at least on the level of Sukuna and Gojo, 70 years to completely master all of Sukuna's techniques, which would also include Fuga, possibly the world cutting slash, because remember, Sukuna was able to learn it after seeing it once, and Yuji watched that same fight, so I bet if he rewatched the footage later in life after figuring out Sukuna's techniques, he learned it too. Also has a better version of Sukuna's domain, as instead of just raining down normal slashes, it rains down soul slashes. Possibly a barrierless domain as well, but this one is just speculation. And finally, can hit nuclear powered one-shot black flashes at will. Keep in mind, black flashes at this level are straight up enough to knock out any of the top tiers. So imagine if every single one of his punches are that strength. They are getting clipped on. Firstly, if you were to fight Sukuna, it's literally just him, but better, because he has extra stuff in his arsenal. Remember that 8-piece Black Flash combo? Yeah, this time he does the same thing, but Sukuna is dead by the third punch. If you were to fight Gojo, as we said before, he would probably just use the world cutting slash, Kit-Katting him again. Then finally, Dabura is getting spanked around. On top of the fact that even Yuji himself says, if Yuta's granddaughter were to lose this fight, he'd clean it up. He says this with his hands in his pockets, not worried in the slightest. Overall, I really do believe these four have pretty similar stats when it comes to speed and power, but the fact that all of his punches can be to this level really just makes me believe he's far too much to handle for any sorcerer. So yeah, that's how Yuji became the strongest sorcerer of all time. If you were watching till the end, I appreciate it, as this is a newer style of video for me. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Once again, thanks to Yuri for being in the special grade tier of our Patreon, and to all the others. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Make me into the strongest.